On the phone, Nikolas Kozloff. He is the author of Hugo Chavez, Oil Politics and the Challenge to the U.S., as well as Revolution, South America, and the Rise of the New Left. Welcome to the program, Nikolas.
Thank you for having me.
So give us I got to say about Hugo Chavez that he is one of the most controversial figures. Obviously in the context of broader American politics, but even on the left, there has always been, it seems to me, a real polarity of opinion about this man. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that populism, as it's defined in Latin America, is always rather polemical. It's based on the charismatic leadership of usually someone who comes in who's going to break up the political system, rescue the country from economic political collapse, and rallies the people against ill-defined foreign domestic enemies. And I think that Venezuelan politics has become very, very polarized by both pro and anti-Chavez forces. I would like to stick out a kind of a third position, which is not too common, but I think that there is a place for a more reasoned, reflective perspective on Chavez and his rule, which while admitting that Chavez has accomplished a lot through his social and economic policies, is nevertheless a little bit critical of this populist style of leadership, which I think you can rally people for short-term political gains through populism and accomplish a lot. But I think that there's been a lot of top-down leadership, and there's been some bottom-up building empowerment from the bottom up, but not nearly enough in my personal view. So I think that's where I'm a little bit critical of populism, because it relies, I think, excessively on this top-down model. And so I think that there was this contradiction almost from the inception with Chavez between the top-down leadership and then building empowerment from the bottom up. And in my personal view, there wasn't enough attention on the latter.
All right. Well, so give us a little bit of a history of Chavez, when he came to power, and what was the context in which he came to power in the late 90s?
Well, I think if Americans were aware at all of Venezuela during the 90s or before, they probably regarded the country as kind of a corrupt two-party democracy, similar to the U.S., and a reliable geostrategic partner exporting oil to the U.S., one of the leading oil exporters to the U.S. And I think Chavez essentially blew that two-party system out of the water and created his own PSUV party, amalgamated the left into his own populist banner, and I think has revolutionized Venezuelan politics. And I think to this day, I think just psychologically speaking, the Venezuelan people have changed, and they're not going to go back to, it's going to be very difficult for the right to turn the country back to the days of the 1990s when Venezuela was more allied to the U.S. Whatever happens in this next election, I just think it'll be very difficult psychologically to turn back the accomplishments and just the psychological makeup of the Venezuelan people who have been really radicalized by the Chavez years.
Yeah, I mean, talk about that psychological change. I mean, where did it go? Where did it? Just describe where it went from and where it went to, because it seems that there was. You describe it as there was a state in Venezuela of essentially the people being left out of the equation in some respects. I mean, is that accurate?
Well, I think Chavez has employed this term, socialism for the 21st century. And to my mind, it was always a rather vaguely defined term. I don't think Chavez ever just satisfactorily explained how is this going to be different from Cuban-style socialism. And so there were a number of innovative measures that Chavez instituted, which I would have liked to have seen deepened to an even greater extent. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Very few people are aware that Venezuela has one of the most vibrant economic systems of economic cooperatives in the world. And I'm not saying that the economic cooperatives are perfect. Sometimes there's mismanagement, there's corruption, there might be cronyism. But nevertheless, I think it's worth looking into economic cooperatives, particularly in light of the 2008 financial collapse. Workers are looking for alternatives, and there is a kind of a crisis of the capitalist state in Europe and also the United States right now. So in some ways, Chavez was a throwback in terms of some of his politics, but in other ways, in other respects, I think he was quite innovative. For example, with the economic cooperatives, like I say, but also with, say, the communal councils, which were designed to empower local communities. And you had communities actually taking charge of their own budgets, which is actually a pretty radical idea. So it would be like no longer is the city council, the state government, or even the federal government deciding on the budgetary matters. The community itself decides. And that is the inherently radical idea. And I think Chavez did push for communal councils, but I would have liked to have seen an even greater deepening of that. And then there are other ideas. For example, alternative currencies. Chavez backed the Sucre currency, which never really got off the ground, unfortunately. But I think in principle, philosophically, it is not a bad idea. And in fact, in some countries that have been ravaged by the financial collapse, like Spain, they're experimenting with these alternative currencies. So, and then we could go into other measures. For example, the ALBA alliance, with the reciprocal barter exchange outside of the typical corporate trade. And all of these are worth looking into. Perhaps no one measure is going to be a silver bullet which solves social economic malaise, but I think taken together in certain, very profound ways, Chavez challenged the underlying logic of the capitalist state. Unfortunately, there were different constituencies within the Chavez banner, for example, the managerial capitalist class, and I think Chavez spent far too much time trying to appease the more backward constituencies and not revolutionizing society to the degree that he might have.
To what extent can those type of reforms be replicated, and insofar as that they were in many respects, or there was a lot more leeway there because you had such a tremendous asset in the it being having the world's largest oil reserves, more or less. All right, I mean that's a funding source. It seems to me that is that must have had huge implications for what he could and could not do.
Well, yeah, to be sure, he was able to fund a lot of these programs, the health and education programs, which benefited millions of people through the oil largesse, and then also extend his influence within the wider region by throwing around a lot of development aid, which helped him garner, very key strategic allies: Ecuador, Bolivia, for example, Nicaragua, Cuba. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen to all those geostrategic alliances now, particularly if an opposition candidate wins the next election. But I don't know, maybe even Maduro, his successor, might soften towards the U.S. So yeah, I feel like with this populist leadership, it is very much reliant on the qualities of the one charismatic leader. And again, if there's one thing that I'm critical of, I think Chavez probably should have groomed a successor earlier in, say, 2006. And there was just way too much emphasis on the charismatic leadership. I think, and then you subtract the charismatic leader out of that equation, and you have these rather ideologically inchoate movements that are trying to cobble together different constituencies, And then if the charismatic leader vanishes from the equation, then it could just all implode. And so that's where I'm a little critical, because I think it should have deepened the revolution 2006 onward. Instead, some of the more retrograde tendencies came to the fore, and I think that there was a historic opportunity that was kind of lost.
Interesting. And, it occurs to me that I don't know that there's ever been a time, at least in my lifetime, where the United States seems to have less influence and frankly, less interest in some respects in what's going on in Latin and Central America, for better or for worse. And I would argue in some instances it's probably both. But how much did that, how much did that play into what Chavez was able to do and what he did?
Well, I think if you didn't have a George Bush, you probably wouldn't have had an Hugo Chavez. I think there was that historic speech where Chavez came to the United Nations, and then he talked about how the devil was there on the day before, and he still smelled sulfur.
Yes, we played that. We just played that clip. It's actually pretty funny, but
yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think if George Bush had not been in power, then Hugo Chavez probably would not have had nearly as much traction as he did. And I think precisely for that reason, over the past couple of years, since Obama got elected in 2008, I think it was a little bit more difficult for Chavez because he just didn't have his rhetorical punching bag. Even though I'm actually still critical of Obama, because even though he ratcheted down the rhetoric on Venezuela, you have to look at what Obama has done in practice. And basically, even though it's a story that hasn't really been reported, Obama has been the Pentagon under Obama has been building up his network of military bases, encircling all of these leftist countries in South America, in Colombia, in Chile. And they even tried to install a military base in Argentina, which actually got shelved because of the popular opposition. And but nevertheless, yeah, I do think it has been more difficult for Chavez because he lacks his rhetorical punching bag. I also think that perhaps Obama's race played a factor. I just think maybe it was a little bit more difficult to oppose a black president because Chavez did much to restore race relations, and he carried out important reforms towards marginalized communities in Venezuela, such as Afro-Venezuelans, indigenous people. And so maybe it was in some way psychologically a little bit more difficult for Chavez to oppose Obama, who's still, I think, a little more popular, or probably a lot more popular than Bush.
Yes,
in the wider region,
and also has the distinct advantage of not smelling of sulfur.
Exactly.
But give me a sense of what Hugo Chavez, his legacy on the sort of the democracy that seems to be, or the democratization that seems to be ongoing in Latin America and Central America. Did he have any impact on that, or was by either what he did proactively or simply by not being a reactionary force? I mean, what was his impact in that regard?
Well, I think it depends on how you define democracy. I think he was freely and fairly elected, so despite the right-wing rhetoric about how Chavez is an authoritarian, the Carter Center and others have validated all of the elections. So there's no question about that. But I would say that, some of his policies on the media, some of his policies towards the judiciary do raise questions for me. I also think that Chavez came out of the military. He surrounded himself with yes men and had a kind of and built up popular militias. And so there's a whole military association that makes me feel a little uncomfortable. But nevertheless, it depends on how you define democracy, because I was talking before about some of these popular measures for empowerment at the local level. Now, you could argue that maybe this doesn't jive with people's typical definitions of democracy, but economic cooperatives are a form of democracy. Workers have more control over their everyday lives. And like I said before, Venezuela has the most advanced system of cooperatives in the world. Even though Chavez didn't really tout those accomplishments internationally, I suspect, because he didn't want to alienate investors. But and again, with the communal councils, if you take away the cronyism and some of the problems, and admittedly, some of the communal councils were plagued with mismanagement and cronyism, and so I won't say it's a great picture, but just on its own, the idea of communal councils is a radical democratic idea. So it's just yet one more contradiction of Chavez and his long Bolivarian revolution, amongst many.
And how about his influence on the rest of Latin America? I mean, outside of Venezuela, was he where was he in the context of how Latin America seems to be changing now over the past 10, 15 years?
Well, I think, again, like I said before, up to 2006, I think maybe there was some interest in the wider region in this Chavez model, just for simple idealistic reasons. He was pushing this ALBA block, which is very innovative. In my view, one of the more innovative things that he did, trading outside of the usual corporate structures, barter exchanges internationally. I think maybe that appealed to the more idealistic left in the wider region. But I don't know in the long term whether the Chavez model, so to speak, is actually going to endure. And in fact, Chavez used to talk about this term, 21st century socialism, and that was never clearly defined. So I'm not sure whether there's a coherent model. And if anything, I think populism relies on this charismatic leader who doesn't have a very coherent ideology. And inevitably, a lot of these populist movements just implode once the charismatic leader is taken out of the equation. Having said that, there is Rafael Correa over in Ecuador who just won a resounding victory. And I think in certain respects, Rafael Correa is a protege of Hugo Chavez. He employs similar over-the-top rhetoric. He's a populist. He's an economic nationalist. And I think it'll be interesting maybe to watch Rafael Correa also, who's had problems with the U.S. He recently offered a diplomatic asylum to Julian Assange, and I think he's trying to gain more notoriety for himself. The only thing is Ecuador is a smaller country than Venezuela, and Venezuela itself is not even that large. It's like the size of California. So Ecuador is even smaller. It's got some oil, but even less than Venezuela. So I'm not sure whether Rafael Correa can wield the same heft as Hugo Chavez, although I'm sure that he's trying to fill those shoes.
And so now, what do you? It's obviously hard to anticipate what happens next with Venezuela, but am I wrong in imagining that right now there are a board of directors of the major oil corporations in the world right now who are at an emergency meeting talking about how they get to Venezuela first?
I certainly wouldn't be surprised by that. I think Hugo Chavez pursued a nationalistic oil policy. He built up PDVSA, the state-run oil company, which funded a lot of his social programs. He pursued an oil policy that was not nearly as aligned with U.S. energy policy. It's certainly not as much as his predecessors during the 1990s. He was a price hawk in OPEC under Ali Rodriguez, who was a communist guerrilla fighter from Venezuela, who became Secretary General of OPEC, and who was a price hawk. So yeah, I'm sure that I would not be surprised if the oil companies are trying to stage a comeback and want to realign Venezuela's oil policy on different lines, let alone probably end the oil shipments to Cuba. So that's another instance in which Venezuela probably fell afoul of the United States because it used this oil largesse in different and politically controversial ways in the wider region to gain allies.
What do you think U.S. policy? How does U.S. policy towards Venezuela change now? I mean, how aggressive do you think the United States is going to be in this context?
Well, I think to his credit, Obama has been a bit more circumspect, and there's been a ratcheting down of the saber rattling that we saw from the likes of Donald Rumsfeld, Condoleezza Rice, but there's still a diplomatic impasse, and just past few days, I think the Venezuelans expelled a couple of American diplomats who they said they were spying or they were actually military spies. So there's still we're going to have a big thaw in relations for things to improve, and so let's not underestimate the situation. Although, fortunately, we don't have that rhetorical back and forth of the Bush administration, and there hasn't been attempted coup d'états. But I'm sure that Obama has been aiding the opposition, funding through the usual means. So, but I think it's more a cosmetic difference as opposed to an actual practical difference.
It is amazing because it's hard to recall this, but during the Bush years, Venezuela was right up there with the axis of evil. I mean, I've almost forgotten it, but he was so demonized in this country by the Bush administration, and he seemed to obviously welcome it. And I think what I think Americans may know him best for, in some respects, is simply just helping with home heating oil subsidies, when these were cut off during the Bush years.
Right, exactly, and I think, I think that maybe Obama just made a calculated decision that hey, it's not really worth demonizing Chavez because then they'll probably rally the Latin left, and so I think Obama's just pursued a shrewder foreign policy. I'm not necessarily saying it's more moral in every respect, but I think it's just been shrewder and probably smarter in certain respects, because what did all that anti-Chavez rhetoric actually achieve? I mean, Chavez was built up in the eyes of many across the wider region, in Argentina and everywhere he went. He was a hero. So it was almost counterproductive. You're trying to unseat Hugo Chavez, then you demonize him, then actually he's going to get more popular support through these kinds of pronouncements.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that the dynamic during the Bush administration, in the same way that Hugo Chavez used the United States as a rhetorical punching bag to enhance his own prestige, the same thing was done by Bush, frankly, because there's political efficacy in creating these boogeymen that with your domestic, if they're external boogeymen, it helps you with domestic politics, whether you're Hugo Chavez or whether you're George Bush. And it's just it has been fascinating to me, and just how Latin America and Central America have receded in terms of being those type of threats that we should be perceiving, in this country. I grew up at a time where, the Sandinistas were going to come and invade, the original Red Dawn. All of this seems to have changed, and it seems to have allowed for a flourishing of sorts, at least of some of these democratization movements throughout the region, and it's just sort of fascinating to see. And I wonder if that's in some ways going to be reversed now that there may be a sense that we could have access to that oil again within a short period of time.
Well, I also think, though, along the lines of what you're saying, that let's not go too far and come to the conclusion that the U.S. has necessarily lost influence. I think I've written a lot about these WikiLeaks cables and what they reveal about U.S. foreign policy in the wider region. And just because Hugo Chavez has rallied the left and there's this public shows of solidarity in South America against the U.S. and U.S. policies, the WikiLeaks cables reveal that the United States is still very much in the ballgame. And you see that, behind the scenes, these Latin leaders, be it Michelle Bachelet of Chile or any number of different cables, underscore just how fragile this Latin alliance really is and just how vulnerable they are to U.S. pressure. And so time and time again, these cables show how U.S. diplomats will be talking with, their counterparts in whatever South American country, and they'll be insulting their fellow leftist bloc in South America and cozying up to the U.S. So I think you have to distinguish between the public rhetoric on the one hand, so this leftist solidarity, but and on the other, what they say behind closed doors and how they cast aspersions on one another, and just how vulnerable they still are to U.S. Political economic pressure.
Well, it's fascinating stuff. Nikolas Kozloff, author of Hugo Chavez, Oil, Politics, and the Challenge to the U.S. and Revolution, South America and the Rise of the New Left. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll put a link up to nikolaskozloff.com where people can see more of your writings. Thanks again for joining us today.
Okay, thank you so much.